I don't know if you can hear that noise in the background, but there's a flock of Canada geese flying overhead. That's always one of my favorite sounds of the autumn here in western Pennsylvania. So here I am sitting on the place that I've called home for the last 40 years. And as I'm walking this morning, I'm thinking about the folks that lived here long before me, the Erie. Once upon a time, this land belonged to the Erie. And I think about them because when you live in a culture like they lived in, you take care of each other. And that reminded me of a story that is related to this place right here. And that is, Karen and I bought this place from from Elsie Baker. Elsie and her husband Dan had lived on this place for quite a while when we bought it. And the story is that in 1957 they had a prosperous little diversified farm, not wealthy but prosperous. I mean, they were able to feed themselves and contribute food to the neighborhood and to others far and wide. And judging by where I'm sitting, I'm looking at the trees here. I'm guessing that in 1957 these trees were probably part of a pasture, because none of them are very old, probably 50, 60, 70 years old at most. But anyway, because they had this diversified farm, the Bakers had a barn. And on that barn, or in that barn, they had chickens, and they also had cattle, and they also had pigs. In addition to their barn, they had a large berry patch, and it must have been, we never saw it, but it must have been a phenomenal garden, because when we bought the place, the old house was filled with all kinds of things that Elsie had preserved. And the story is that Elsie sold eggs and milk and other things to folks nearby. But anyway, in 57, getting back to 1957, tragedy struck the Bakers. There was a lightning strike, and the barn burned to the ground. When the barn burned to the ground, that would have been a devastating blow to their farm, because, like I said, it housed a lot of their livestock. And what could have been a devastating blow actually turned into a blessing, and that was the community members pulled together, and from what I understand, they rebuilt that barn in a weekend. And that barn stood pretty much until last year. It would have maybe stood longer. It would have definitely stood longer, but as Elsie aged, she wasn't able to take care of things. And as a consequence, there was some serious damage done to the foundation, and eventually became unstable. And so Karen and I had it pulled down. But anyway, the community came together to help them out. And the reason I was thinking about that is I've been thinking about another thing that the community comes together and helps out with, and that's health care. One of the most common insurance policies that people have in these days is this insurance company called GoFundMe. GoFundMe. Go figure. In the richest country in the world, the leading cause of bankruptcy is medical debt. So we need to pull together like the folks in Cherry Valley did for the Bakers. And one of the best ways we can do that is with something called Improved and Expanded Medicare for All. This isn't an issue for the state. This is a national issue, but nonetheless, it certainly impacts folks in this state. The way it is now, President Obama and his allies in the Congress passed something called the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare. Well, Obamacare is basically a welfare system for the insurance companies. Since Obamacare was implemented, the insurance companies have reaped record profits. And unfortunately, the medical debt goes on unabated. Many people can't afford to get care because of high deductibles or high copays. So medical insurance that you can't use is not medical insurance at all. That's why we need improved and expanded Medicare for all. Now, I'm a senior now. I'm on Medicare, and I have to admit I've talked to a lot of seniors, and I've never yet heard anyone complain about Medicare except for a few things. One of those things is Medicare does not cover prescription drugs. I mean, there's a Part C that you could pay for, but it doesn't pay for that. And the other thing it doesn't pay for, the things that Medicare doesn't pay for, is dental care. Now, how we can separate our teeth from the rest of our health is beyond me, but for some reason, dental care is not included. And then the last thing that's not included, which is something that I'm very familiar with now, and that is extended care. When you get old, there's a death tax, but it's not the ones that a lot of the folks cry about. You know, that death tax only impacts a very tiny minority. But there's another death tax that impacts most of us, and that is long-term care. My dad and my mom were both very frugal people. They even had a Cadillac health plan when they were retired. I mean, they had a good health insurance plan, but the one thing it didn't cover was long-term care. And as my parents got older, they had saved a nice amount of money, but as they got older, paying for that long-term care became very expensive, and it really ate into their savings. So, yeah, that's another thing. We need to fix that. And so what I'm suggesting is that as a country that takes care of its own, which is what we like to pride ourselves on, we really should be taking care of our own in the form of improved and expanded Medicare for all. Get rid of this for-profit system. We need to implement a system like the Medicare system that I'm on right now for everybody. Hey, have a good one.